Welcome back to Takacs McGinnis Elder Care Law News Hour. I'm Tim Takacs, and our focus today is on estate planning, taxes, and trust as they relate to the needs of certain demographic groups. Barbara?
And I'm Barbara McGinnis. Welcome back. We're back again with Frank Cardenas and Christy Brazel, and we're going to continue a conversation with them, but our focus is going to be different. We're going to look at non-married or unmarried couples, though, and how the role of marriage impacts estate planning and taxation and their public benefits, right? So we'll start with Christy. What is special estate planning needs do non-married couples have, and how are they different from planning for just a single person?
Well, non-married couples, we like to recommend that they have some type of contract in place, because it's really important. And a lot of people, when they start living together, they don't think about that. But there are issues of who's going to buy the house and how that affects you tax-wise. How are you going to hold title to the house? Are you both going to be on the checking account? You're also going to need to spell out, if you have children from previous relationships, what assets are yours and what are theirs, and how do you, make that work.
So Frank, what challenges do non-married couples face in obtaining or keeping public benefits like Medicare or Social Security?
Well, specifically with Social Security retirement, and they do need to provide to the Social Security Administration a marriage certificate. So if they are unmarried, they wouldn't be receiving a spousal benefit. However, if they have previous marriages, what they need to prove is a 10 years worth of marriage. So even if it's like, say, a blended family or an ex-spousal benefit, as long as they've been married for 10 years or longer, and they can prove it with a marriage and divorce decree, they're still able to receive ex-spousal benefits, which are paid just like normal married spousal benefits. So unmarried or not, if we have that kind of issue, there's still benefits they need to look into.
So say if I believe in serial marriage, meaning I'm married several times,
Yes.
each spouse I marry, I'm married for 10 years and then I get rid of them, or they get rid of me probably.
And it's not uncommon. We do have clients that, they've had maybe 3 previous marriages that each independently lasted for 10 years or longer. So as long as each particular marriage lasts 10 years or longer, each independent spouse is entitled to their spousal benefit.
You get to pick. You get to pick the benefit that you're going to draw from.
That's right. That's right. So the rule
hopefully that spouse is going to choose the highest one. Right?
Yes, that's what we recommend them do.
Right.
And even the agency would recommend that for them as well. But if there are 2 or 3 previous, or even 4 previous marriages that lasted for 10 years, they are able to choose which one they would want to draw off of. Now, if they were to remarry, they're not able to draw on the old ex-spouse. They would have to look at their current spousal benefits.
Okay, that's a discourage of marriage law, right?
Of remarriage.
Yes, right.
And one important thing, though, with that is that if something were to happen as far as becoming a widow early in age, you do have the option that if you can stick to your widow benefit, but if you're over the age of 60 and you remarry, you can still get a widow benefit or look at your current spousal.
Right. Now, it's not going to affect the person, the serial marriage person like me, perhaps.
Right.
Which is, so people don't misunderstand.
Hypothetical.
Very important. It would
not affect my benefits in any way, right?
Yeah, for instance, if I had 3 ex-spouses with 10 years apiece, they could all draw off of my record, but it would not affect my benefits or my current spousal benefits.
Okay.
If that were the case.
All right.
What about if they have kids? This say a non-married couple that has kids.
Now, the beneficiary, whoever is the parent, if they're receiving disability retirement, they would also receive benefits as long as the child is under age 18 or 19, if still in high school.
Okay. All right. So obviously this question is going to be for Christy, because I'm going to ask about trust. Can trust level the inequities of a non-married couple from an estate plan?
So the very basic definition of a trust is assets held by a title of property for benefit of someone else. So, a trust is a really good way if you have assets and you think that your partner, girlfriend, boyfriend is not maybe a responsible person with money. So you can put your assets in a trust, and then the trust document will determine how those are given out to the partner. So, you know, you could also do it for minor children. You know, there's all different types of trusts. Right. We usually leave the type of trust up to the estate planning attorney, and then we will help with the tax implications from that.
So you're kind of like the first line person there, that they're coming into you every year and saying, I've got this life situation, and you're identifying issues and saying, you need to really take care of this.
That's right, and we kind of want to be able, you know, the worst thing is when, you know, you get those, oh, by the ways, I already did this, you know, and so you hate to see, you know, a tax situation that you could have prevented but you can't help, you know, so we like to be able to help our clients on the front end and direct them to the right person, you know, to do that estate planning.
So we have non-married people here. So the non-married couple comes into you, and part of what you do is tax planning. Okay, so what are you going to tell them?
That's right. So, you know, one of the things that we were talking about at break is that you lose out on the marriage portability of the estate tax exemption. So right now, for 2017, I believe it's $5,490,000 per person.
So what does portability mean?
It means that if I die and my estate is only worth $1 million, I still will file that estate tax return even though I'm under that umbrella. But then I will choose the marriage portability election, which will allow my spouse to get the remainder of that. So, you know, because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. Your spouse could win the lottery or become, you know, sell a business, get an inheritance, and so they might need more than their $5,490,000.
So they take your million and
they take whatever's left, the $4 million that I had left, because I only, you know. But an unmarried couple doesn't get to do that, and so that's a real drawback in estate planning.
So that's the remarriage encouragement law, right?
That's right.
Yeah, but you know, $5–10 million, that doesn't affect a lot of us. You know, what about just
that's true
annual filing of tax returns as a married versus a non-married couple?
Well, I mean, an unmarried couple is going to file single. So, you know, everything is going to be separated. A married couple has that choice to file married filing jointly or married filing separately, depending on what situation works out better for them. And most times it is to file married filing jointly.
What about gift taxes? Because part of, you know, now that I'm hearing this conversation, it sounds like, well, maybe the wealthier spouse or non-spouse could transfer gift assets to the non-wealthier non-spouse.
So does
that sound like a good idea?
Well, I mean, to me, it was really kind of neither here nor there, because you get an annual $14,000 gift tax exclusion, but then that estate tax exemption, the $5,490,000, that includes all gifts. So, you know, as long as it falls under that umbrella, you know, talking about giving gifts, for example, you know, a lot of people, like you said, don't have $5 million, but they have a house. You know, so do I want to just go ahead and gift my children my house while I'm still alive? You know, that's a real popular question. And you know, if you gift something during your lifetime, they get the basis that you have. So if you bought that house 40 years ago for $70,000, that is their basis. So when they turn and sell that, they have a gain on that difference. If they wait and transfer it during death, they get what's called a step-up in basis, and that's the value at the date.
So just before we go to break, we've just got about a minute or so. We haven't talked about non-married couples who have maybe a special needs child.
So
what about the public benefits part of that?
Oh, that's a huge one. We have to give a lot of education with. If there is a special needs child, like say even in my instance, I have a sibling who was born with a mental disability. If that child was deemed disabled before the age of 22, they will be able to receive retirement or disability benefits off of mom or dad. So that's huge for them to know, because that would change the entire dynamic about when to file for their retirement, their Social Security. So they just need to understand that if there is a disabled child that became disabled under 22, then they're able to receive benefits.
Okay.
All right. So
I think we have contact information for McMurray, Fox & Associates, as well as FedLogic on the screen. And of course, this information and others will be available on our website as well.
All right, so it's time for another break. And when we come back, we'll look at these special financial planning needs faced by women. So we'll be right back.
This is a Storm 5 HD weather update. Sign up for Weather Call at newschannel5.com.
Hi everyone, I'm Storm 5 meteorologist Leland Statham. Not much to see on radar. 1 or 2 stray showers could develop for us this afternoon, but most of you won't see a thing. I will know though, where it does rain, it could be briefly heavy for a moment or two because it's just so humid out there. Check out where we stand as far as our temperatures are concerned right now. And here are the numbers now from Nashville International. Your Friday forecast showing a high today of 97, heat index 100 to 106, winds light southwest at around 5 miles per hour. A muggy 77 tonight, tomorrow 96, 92 for you on Sunday. Then a front's in here and the front's going to get hung up, so that's going to keep a rain chance going into early next week. I don't think though that there will be a washout for any particular day. Have a good weekend.
I'm doing things much better now.
It's working for me. He brought me back to life.
Be your best with Talk of the Town.
I'm Dr. Kevin Mitchell from the Wellness Institute of Nashville. Non-surgical spinal decompression is a state-of-the-art technology that brings in blood and nutrients and fluid into the spinal disc. Any patient that's had back pain, either acute or for long periods of time, anyone that has tingling in their arms or legs or weakness into their extremities is a candidate for non-surgical spinal decompression.
I had gotten to the point where regular doctors treating me for pain in my back just weren't helping.
I couldn't even walk. All I would do is lay in the bed, and that's not a life.
I had a bulging disc in my neck, pushing on a nerve.
It allows the fluid to come into the disc, and it'll literally reverse the pressure of that disc. And the unique thing about this procedure is there's no medication, there's no surgery, and no injections.
Oh, I'll tell you, you feel so much better.
I decided to give it a try, and I don't regret it.
If you're suffering pain, don't settle. Come and see me today. For the first 40 callers, they can have an examination, x-rays if needed, x-ray report, bring your MRI if you have one, and we'll go over that as well for only $29. If you have pain, you no longer have to settle for that. Pick up the phone, give us a call here today at the Wellness Institute of Nashville.
Car accident?
Ponzi Law wins.
When a totaled car is making you totally crazy?
Ponzi Law wins.
When going to the hospital means going broke?
Ponzi Law wins.
When the insurance company only offers this, but your medical bills are this?
Ponzi Law wins.
They've taken bad insurance offers and turned them into 6- and 7-figure settlements.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm Michael Ponzi. If you've been injured, we will win your case. Or you pay us nothing. That's our no-fee guarantee.
Ponzi Law wins.
Call 615-244-4321.
Welcome back to the Takacs McGinnis Elder Care News Hour. I'm Barbara McGinnis, and in today's episode, we're talking about estate planning and unique circumstances for certain demographics.
Hi, and I'm Tim Takacs, and in this segment, we're going to talk about estate planning as it relates to women. Women often retire earlier, many cases to retire to care for elderly family members. Women typically outlive their husbands and often spend many years alone. So with us today, and to give the financial planner's perspective, is Jana Lisle Parham. Jana is a certified financial planner and Senior Vice President of Lisle Parham Wealth Management in Nashville. Welcome, Jana.
Thank you for having me.
So how do estate planning needs differ from those of men?
Well, as you can imagine, a lot of the estate planning needs are the same. As you mentioned, women do tend to live longer. So 40% of women over the age of 65 live alone, either by choice or by chance. Women, according to census data, outlive men by about 5 years. And the average life expectancy today of a woman is 81. And, you know, that's a statistic, but you have to stop then and think that means 50% of women live beyond the age of 81. It becomes a little more real world then. So as women think about estate planning, I think one of the most important things and the most different things for them is there's a high likelihood, regardless of their involvement earlier in their lifespan with their partner, that they will be solely in charge of their financial world and their estate planning needs at some point.
So those statistics that you've given us, about 40% of those over 65 live alone, and so
that's right, of women over 65.
And that's a large group of people.
Absolutely.
So uniquely, they need to plan differently than if they were still a couple, because like we were saying earlier, the surrogate decision making and becoming financially astute, right?
That's right.
And that's what you help them do.
And one of the things that is kind of beneath the surface there is that with all financial planning, you're trying to plan not just for today, but for the future. And the future rarely looks like it does today. It doesn't look like it financially. It doesn't look like it in terms of how many people are in the household. And so it's very important that women become educated, regardless of their desire to be involved at this stage with estate planning.
Okay, I'm going to ask something. Just what about, because women historically, especially older women now, are probably have been lower earners than perhaps their spouse, right?
Absolutely.
That has to have an impact then on how they make their money stretch.
It does, and you know, I think that's changing over time, but the fact is that women traditionally have been the ones to stay home, raise a family, and now more and more women are the caregivers of their parents or their in-laws, and so women do spend more time in the home. So they're going to have less assets that they've built up in their name in terms of retirement accounts, and their job skills are not as up to date traditionally. So it is extra important, I think, for women to plan in terms of estate planning. You know, just thinking about things like, what if my working spouse, if I'm the one at home doing the caregiving, passes away before retirement? You know, what does that financial planning look like? And part of financial planning is to examine a lot of different scenarios so you can plan for the hoped inevitability of long lives for both of you, but also the fact that if the gentleman or the woman should pass away during the working years, that you have a recourse.
So let's say that a client comes to you, she's 68 years old, and her husband, who is 70, suddenly died. You know, and let's say that, like probably a lot of couples, they were thinking they were going to live a long and happy life and retire in the south of France, or maybe in Jamestown, Tennessee, or someplace in between. Now what? You know, what is that spouse, that woman, who thought she had basically had everything taken care of? What are you going to recommend to her?
Well, you know, so let's start first with the ideal scenario, and that is that long ago, the woman and the man engaged in financial planning and estate planning that would provide for this situation. All of us know that it's absolutely the worst time and situation in the world for someone to begin getting engaged and begin getting educated in financial planning while they're in the midst of mourning a loved one. And if there's one thing I can encourage women to do, it's to really take that approach that we are partners in this, and we have to have a partnership in terms of determining our estate plans. But that is the case at times, that women come in and they are recently bereaved and they don't know what to do. In that case, we would take a step back. We would look at all the estate planning documents with them. We would examine all the beneficiary forms that they have, and then we would embark on a lot of education, because trust is involved here, and that comes with time, but people have to be willing to educate people, and I would encourage those women to ask questions.
So it sounds like really it's about, I guess in healthcare, it's sometimes referred to as self-management support. Is you as the financial planner for, maybe, as you say, a widow who is recently widowed, you know, is to educate them so that they can manage their own affairs day to day.
That's right, and you know, just recognizing that their preferences may not be the preferences that their husband had, or they indeed had as a couple. Just helping them get to that place where they realize that really the choices are theirs, and that can be a good thing as well as a scary thing.
Now, here's what I think is the worst case scenario. What if the spouse that comes in is a disabled or incapacitated spouse?
Exactly.
You know, and they're recently widowed.
And that brings us to a very important point, I think, for women, and that is, if it is likely that the woman is going to outlive the male spouse, then when you go to do your powers of attorney, which you mentioned earlier, powers of attorney for health care, powers of attorney for financial, you name your spouse typically as your first power of attorney. What about that next person in line? That is an incredibly likely scenario, and particularly for a disabled person, right? I think it's important as well as we're talking about the disability for, likely those assets might be in trust at that point, and just having an understanding of what that means. But naming that secondary power of attorney, I think, is important.
Well, in the very beginning of this episode, when Tim was asking me about mistakes or oversights, and that's really a frequent one that we see, where
it absolutely
spouses name each other and then there's not a backup plan for decision making, or they've not thought through that and they've just named a child, and then they've not involved and they've not involved the children, and so they inherit now decision-making capacity for a parent, but they're not prepared to do it because they've not been involved.
You bring up a great point. We work a lot with generations of families, and communication about things prior to having to step into those roles is so critical.
And we all like to think that those bad things aren't going to happen to us, not going to happen to our family. Unfortunately, they happen frequently to us.
Right.
And being prepared, being proactive, lets us stay in control. I know I'm preaching to the choir a little bit, but it's still something that I love to say and get out there.
It's one of the best things I think parents can do for their children is to have that conversation. I think we have a publication called Investor Watch, and one of the things that in this recent survey it found is that in the parental and adult-child relationships, everybody expects the parent to be the one to bring it up. Even the adult children would rather that happen. So I think that's a huge gift you can bring to your children.
Jana, there's one thing that we haven't talked about yet is about, and something that we're seeing a lot now in our practice, is what we call the unsupported elder. The older person, and maybe say in this, since we're talking about women, say a widowed 75 years old and maybe has no family, no children, or if they're estranged, or what advice do you give to women in those situations?
Well, it is the whole aging process, as you know, is a big one, and one that former generations just aren't equipped to deal with. They haven't experienced it to the extent that we are now. It's highly likely that if a woman outlives the male, that there's going to either be cognitive or physical disability at some point. So looking into long-term care insurance, or at least having the financial plan developed enough where you're certain whether you can self-insure. Men often have the benefit of having the caregiving done by the wife, and so there's that family network of support that, as you mentioned, women may not have. I've had women want to look into long-term care simply because they don't want their children to feel the need to have to help mom out.
Good point.
Right.
I think we have contact information for Lisle Parham Wealth Management on the screen right now. I want to thank Jana for being here today.
All right, so it's time for another break. When we come back, we'll continue our focus on estate planning for women with a look at the implications of divorce. Coming up, Women in Divorce. Stay with us.